Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's SS454 LS6. I'm over at Andrew's house with his 68 Chevelle. You've seen it in some of my previous videos. If you haven't, check them out. And as you can see, there's no engine in the car. After 30 years, Andrew's decided to freshen up the engine. So it says 375 horsepower, 396, but those that know, this is actually an LS6 454 crate engine from 1990, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes. It looks basically like a 396.
Yeah.
So I left it on. I left the 396 logos on for the car. The car is a 396. And yeah, I'm not scared to tell everybody that it is a 454.
The engine, the way it is now, is virtually how it was 30 years ago. I guess the engine was black when you first got it, and now it's orange.
Yeah, it was black. The valve covers and the bottom of the engine was black. The intake manifold was unpainted, so it was aluminum.
Yep. And I guess those are the couple of things that are slightly different than the 1970 LS6. Was the intake manifold's a little different. This is more of a high rise, I guess, right?
Yeah, and the heads are also open chamber. The real LS6s or the true LS6s that came in the cars were actually closed chambers, so the compression ratio was higher.
Yeah, so this is 10.2 versus 11.2-ish from the originals, or the 1970 version. And those are 188 rectangular port cylinder heads.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think they flow exactly the same. They're just open chamber. So maybe they flow a little better.
Actually, I heard that they actually run better with the pistons.
So those are comp roller rockers, I believe?
Yeah, yeah. Every 10 years I do the valve springs, and that seems to wake it up and revive it again.
And of course, we talked about the fuel injection. Mind if we take a look at your EFI setup?
Yeah, it's a Holley Terminator Stealth. And this is the only system that fits on my car because I want it to look stock.
And if you guys have not seen the video about Andrew's installation setup, you can take a look. I'll leave a link in the description. But yeah, Holley Terminator Stealth.
And this is just a dud. This doesn't work. It's just for show.
It looks the sleeper look.
Yeah, it keeps the sleeper look. Right. So the fuel does come out through here.
Yeah. And for those that have not seen the video before this, the timing is controlled through your EFI, right?
Yeah. And this is a dual sync distributor, a Holley dual sync distributor.
I noticed on the intake manifold that there was some flashing or some grinding marks. That was all done from GM, the factory. You never pulled this intake manifold off.
Yeah, no, they did everything on that.
A lot of people are going to say, you know, go to aluminum heads, go to a stroker engine, but that's not your plan. You want to keep this a 454 base that looks just like this. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what I plan on doing. And like I said, I owe the engine. You know, it's treated me well for 30 years.
Yeah.
And if I get another 30 out of it.
Well, that should be good because you're not going to pick up a ton of power, but it's going to be a lot better refined and a more efficient engine all around and still look exactly the same. Like there's nothing going to look any different, is there?
No, if that's the whole goal is. So if I gain 50 horsepower, that'll be plenty. I'll be really happy with that. So
this engine in basically the exact same situation is now, aside from the fuel injection, but it is always kind of run the same kind of times. I'm looking at your data logs here. So this is July 1st, 1994. The first pass of the car was a 12.9 at 109-ish miles an hour. You did a best of 12.7 that day. And I think you have ran, what was it, in 2019, you did a 12.48.
Yeah.
At 109 miles an hour as well?
Yeah, that's just before I put the fuel injection on when I put the new valve springs on.
And then this looks like your best time at our local track here at 12.303 at 112 miles an hour. And at a better track you did 12.08?
12.08, 114.
So this engine, I mean, basically how it came out of GM is definitely making some power. So if you guys wondering if LS6 engines are powerful, they move. And because your car weighs how much?
3,800 pounds.
With or without driver?
With driver.
So yeah, I mean, this thing's got some power, and I'm very curious to see how much more power you'll pick up. So this will be exciting.
Yeah, and it's always had a manual transmission behind it. And yeah, it's fun to drive, and it's an amazing engine.
And it will go for another 30 years, I hope.
It's not necessarily the quickest engine built, but it's very reliable and it runs the number every year consistently.
Right. The original 1970 LS6 454 that had 11 1/4 to 1 compression ratio was rated at 450 horsepower and 500 foot-pounds of torque. The 1990 Crate LS6 had less compression with open chamber heads and a slightly different intake manifold, but would still be expected to be rated at about the same power levels. As mentioned, Andrew installed comp roller rockers and beehive springs, and obviously the Holley Terminator Stealth EFI on top of a 1-inch open spacer. But after 30 years of abuse, anything over 450 horsepower would be a happy result, and fortunately, we're about to find that out. On the dyno, Andrew chose to use the headers he runs in the car. This will give a more accurate representation of the horsepower the engine will make when installed in the car. We then did a baseline pull to 5400 RPM just to ensure everything is good. We were then ready to let it wind out to 6200. We then tested with the air cleaner installed, as this is how he runs the car all the time, and the engine seemed to like it. So the engine made over 460 horsepower and 470 foot-pounds of torque. Looking at the data log, I felt we could find more power with tuning, but this was just a baseline test, so it wasn't worth the time or money. Instead, Andrew left the engine with the builder, who is a very successful superstock racer that has an incredible attention to detail and years of experience building razor-sharp race engines. The block was bored 30 over and 0 decked, more for trueness than anything else. Internal upgrades included Eagle 6.385 H-beam rods along with Racetech forged pistons. The stock 4-inch crank was retained but polished and balanced. Compression ratio came out to around 10.4 to 1. A modern thin ring pack was used and the bottom end was assembled. No porting was done to the cylinder heads, just some mild cleanup. Because of the design of the ports, the builder could not machine a multi-angle back cut like he wanted, instead just a 45-degree cut to the heads and a decent valve job. Before and after on the flow bench showed the intake port actually lose some high lift CFM, but gained in the low to mid lift, which really was the goal, as port velocity is very important on a 325cc rectangular port head. The exhaust ports did see a marginal increase in CFM throughout the lift range. A custom solid lifter camshaft from Bullet Cams was spec'd at 246/254 at 050, 549 lift on both intake and exhaust, and ground on a 110 centerline. The cam was installed 3 degrees advanced to 107. The intake manifold had the divider cut down about 3/8 of an inch, but otherwise was left untouched. The engine builder meticulously finished the assembly of the big block Chevy, and looking at the specs, not a whole lot has changed, at least not on paper. And now it was time to hit the dyno.
You're not going to pick up a ton of power, but it's going to be a lot better refined and a more efficient engine all around.
So if I gain 50 horsepower, that'll be plenty. I'll be really happy with that.
After the shakedown pull, we knew this was going to be a good day. We decided on a small fuel change to the lower RPM range, and the engine was then run to 6,000 RPM. Found that the O2 sensor on the dyno read significantly different than the O2 sensor that came part of the Holley EFI kit. The dyno was reading in the upper 13s to low 14s, which is way lean, yet the EFI's O2 sensor was reading around 12.5 to 12.7. That's a huge difference. Now, after some minor fuel tuning and a more aggressive timing curve, we set the AFR targets to 12.0 and the engine really responded. Once happy with the fuel and timing, we again threw on the air cleaner to see how it would affect the power. The air cleaner provided similar results as it did during the first dyno session before the rebuild, losing a little bit of top end power but gaining noticeable torque down low. For our final test, Andrew decided to loosen up the lash to 0.026 hot on the intake and exhaust, and if you ever wondered if lash can make a difference on a solid lifter cam, watch this. It really destroyed the power, as much as 29 foot-pounds of torque and 28 horsepower. But overall, it was a very, very good day at the dyno. Comparing how the engine dynoed before the rebuild, you can see the numbers are absolutely staggering. An increase of more than 90 horsepower and 80 foot-pounds of torque. Safe to say the engine builder exceeded everyone's expectations by a huge margin. It's worth mentioning that it was decided to shut the pulls down at 6,200 RPM since the engine uses a stock oil pan that isn't particularly great at oil control. Since the power curve is still climbing, it's possible this engine is capable of even more horsepower.
All right, Andrew, we are done with the dyno. You have got to be happy with the results.
Yep, it was excellent. Couldn't ask for more.
It made over 90 extra horsepower.
90 horsepower.
That's absolutely crazy. I'm blown away.
And 80 foot-pounds of torque.
Yep.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
And I'm actually glad that I dynoed it before and after. Not too many people do that.
Before we even started this process, which I'm not sure if you guys know this, but because of our hair change and beards and whatever, but this has been a 3-month process.
Yeah.
So, I mean, back when we started, you were saying you were hoping for 50 horsepower. I thought maybe probably 40. Anything between 40 and 50 was going to be exceptional. And way past that.
Yeah, that was excellent.
I mean, obviously the power was a massive shock to me, but I think one of the biggest things that I underestimated was the potential of what blueprinting can do to an engine. And the quality, or what a quality engine builder can do.
Yeah, definitely an engine builder is more important than the parts.
Yep.
We've got, 12 pulls, 12 dyno pulls.
Yep.
And we pulled apart the oil filter and it was clean. It was really nice. Just minor little things which totally expected.
Yep. Anything surprise you? There's lots that surprised me.
Yeah, I was surprised how much the valve lash changed it.
Yeah. So
it lost big time.
I can't believe that.
Yeah.
Freaking 28 horsepower from really not a huge lash setting on paper to me. I never would have thought. I thought maybe 10 horsepower tops.
Yeah.
Wow, that really killed it.
Other thing that surprised me on this engine is how easily it is to turn over, just to crank it. I don't know if you have a big luxury. Before mine, it was like you needed a giant, like a breaker bar to turn it over.
When I used to do the valve lash, it would jerk and skip there your TDC mark all the time. And now it's very smooth, and it just, you know, it goes nice and smooth.
Oh, that was the other thing that surprised me is how much this engine changed in its personality. It lopes a lot more, it's a lot louder.
Yeah, it was so quiet the first dyno session. You know, I just barely heard it, but now it's totally different in sound. And it shook a lot more on the dyno. It never shook before. No, it did shake, but maybe it's also tuned. You know, we can...
Maybe it can be tuned out a bit, but...
Yeah, because I do want it smooth on it. As smooth as we can get it.
Yeah, well, we'll do what we can. But...
Yeah, a lot of people prefer the rough idle. I like it smooth.
Yeah. So I guess the next step is, I guess I kind of have to finish off that tune so it's ready to go in the car, because we were just doing really crude changes on the dyno just to make it work for wide open throttle. And now we got to build it for the, you know, part throttle and whatnot. So
yeah,
I'll get that work done, and then hopefully you'll let us be part of the, you know, going in the car and seeing how this actually performs in the car, because it's going to be a different animal.
Yeah, it's totally different than it was before. Much louder. It might be a rougher idle. I hope not, but it might be.
And I mean, you went low to mid 12s before. I think you're instantly 11.7 capable.
There's potential to run 11s.
Yeah.
I'm going to worry about mile per hour. So my mile per hour was 109. I hope to bring that up quite a bit.
Yep.
But the mile per hour is what I'm going to worry about for now.
I'd like to thank Andrew for letting us be part of this process. Not everybody gets to, you know, get to experience somebody else's rebuild in dyno, so big thank you to you, and a huge thank you to the engine builder.
Yep, thanks.
We got to be part of that not everybody gets to do. You know, we got to be a little bit involved with the build, but also full days in the dyno.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah. And thank you, Chris, for doing all this.
No problem.
And coming out to the dyno with me, and it was quite the experience.
Learned lots, fun experience. It was great. And if you guys liked it, you know, please hit the like button, subscribe for more videos, and thanks for watching.